Welcome to Aaron Mahnke's Cabinet of Curiosities, a production of iHeartRadio and Grim and Mild.
Our world is full of the unexplainable. And if history is an open book, all of these amazing tales are right there on display, just waiting for us to explore. Welcome to the Cabinet of Curiosities. A person's teenage years can feel like a whirlwind. You're developing your own independence, but you still have so much to learn. You're gaining responsibility, but you also want to have fun. Perhaps no one from history knows this better than a girl named Alice. In September of 1901, Alice was 16 years old. This is an exciting age for anyone, but Alice's dad just got a new job, so their family was moving to a new part of the country so he could be closer to work. Their new house was enormous. Alice and her 5 siblings were excited to run, play, and explore every nook and cranny. Upon arrival at the new home, Alice and the other kids had to unload all their pets, and this was no easy feat. The family owned a lizard, guinea pigs, a few dogs, a badger, a blue macaw, a regular pig, a hen and a rooster, a barn owl, a pony, a small bear, and even a hyena. But of all the pets, Alice's favorite seemed to be her green snake, which she named Emily Spinach. Fortunately, Alice's dad's new job made him very important, so there were surely helpers around to help situate this small zoo. And of course, people in the neighborhood looked on in surprise and delight as it all went down. But what really captured people's attention was Alice. She was beautiful, and she didn't care what anyone thought of her. The young girl liked to wear her pet snake around her neck. In a time when girls were expected to speak softly and have perfect manners, this caused quite a stir, especially since her father was so well known. This wasn't Alice's most outrageous behavior either. She did many things that girls her age wouldn't have dared to do back then. For one, she drove a car on her own, without a chaperone. She also attended horse races, which were raucous events, usually reserved for men. Alice also snuck whiskey into dry parties and snuck out onto the roof of her family's massive estate to smoke cigarettes. Soon, Alice became a household name. This was just a few years before Hollywood took off, so Alice was a celebrity before celebrities existed. Despite her antics, though, Alice also had good taste. In particular, people admired her fashion sense. Upon her society debut in 1902, when she was 17, Alice became known for wearing bright blue gowns. The particular shade of blue, similar to robin's egg, became known as Alice Blue. Someone even wrote a song titled Alice Blue Gown, which was performed by actress and singer Edith Day on Broadway. By now, Alice's eccentricity preceded her. Some even thought that she was becoming more popular than her powerful father. She was invited to New York to christen the German emperor's yacht, and a crowd cheered for her when she arrived. She received similar welcomes when she traveled to Cuba, New Orleans, and St. Louis. When she visited Puerto Rico, she was greeted with fireworks. It wasn't all fun and games, though. Alice was also known for her smarts. In fact, when her father needed help winning over his counterparts in Asia, he sent Alice on a trip to Japan, China, Korea, and the Philippines. Just like at home, crowds gathered and cheered for Alice when she arrived. She was even welcomed into the homes of emperors and empresses. But Alice had time for some fun, of course. At one point during this trip, she made headlines by jumping into a swimming pool fully clothed. Incidents like that were why, even though Alice's father trusted her to embark on international tours as his representative, he still sometimes got frustrated with her. As one example, Alice was once present for one of her father's meetings, and she wouldn't stop interrupting. Her father famously stated, "I can be president of the United States, or I can control my daughter. I cannot do both." A quote that became famous because that interrupted meeting took place inside the Oval Office. Alice's father, you see, was the President of the United States, President Teddy Roosevelt. It's a tale as old as time. Two lovers drawn together by fate, but kept apart by forces beyond their control. But in this production, the setting isn't fair Verona, it is sunny Rio de Janeiro. The lovers talk in squawks and squeaks, not rhyming verse. And for Romeo and Giulietta, two blue and yellow macaws, the only thing keeping them apart is a thin chain link fence and an impossible choice. Rio de Janeiro might conjure up a lot of images: beautiful beaches, shining skyscrapers, colonial architecture, the Christ the Redeemer statue, but long before the region was Rio, it was rainforest. Before Portuguese colonists founded the city in 1595, the area was home to several indigenous groups, millions of plants, and a rainbow of colors. Black and orange toucans chattered from green trees, while golden monkeys climbed their trunks. Dappled jaguars slinked through the shadows. And in the space skyscrapers occupy today, there were once thousands of brilliantly colored macaws. Over the years, the city grew and the rainforest shrunk. Animals fled or were hunted to extinction in the area. Those macaws, especially the blue and yellow varieties, were no exception. Colonists captured them as pets or killed them for their beautiful feathers. The last record of any wild blue and yellow macaw in Rio was from 1818. In a letter from an Austrian naturalist, he recounts killing one of the birds to study. From then on until now, over 200 years, there have been no sightings of wild macaws in the city of Rio. Well, except one. In the late 1990s, zookeepers at the Rio de Janeiro Zoo found a surprise waiting for them as they arrived at the complex's aviary. Inside the netting and chain link, dozens of species of Brazilian macaws chattered and squawked. Impatient for breakfast, of course. But it wasn't what was inside that enclosure that worried the zookeepers. It was what was outside, a solitary blue and yellow macaw. The macaw was not theirs. It was the first wild macaw spotted within the city in 200 years, and it seemed to have a crush. Giulietta, as the zookeepers dubbed her, clung to the side of the aviary, intently communicating with the others inside. One blue and yellow macaw in particular excitedly returned her interest, latching onto the net in front of her. This was to be her Romeo. For over 2 decades, Giulietta has visited Romeo every day at the aviary. Romeo brings her fruit and vegetables, and Giulietta nuzzles his beak through the chain link. Blue and yellow macaws are an intensely loyal species, and their bond appears unshakable. Once, when the zoo had to do work on the macaw's main aviary, they were forced to move Romeo to a different enclosure. Although the zookeepers worried about confusing the animals, Giulietta had no problem tracking Romeo down in his new home. And theories abound as to where Giulietta came from. Perhaps she was a captive macaw that escaped, and she spends her nights in some green park in the city. Or maybe she's a wild bird who flies every morning from the Tijuca forest over 2 miles away. While both theories are sound, they share one sad similarity. There are no other macaws in either of these areas. Wherever Giulietta lays her head, she does it alone. Why not bring the birds together? Well, for the zookeepers of Rio, that's a sticky moral dilemma. It's illegal to capture a wild macaw, so bringing Giulietta inside the zoo is a no-go. And Romeo was raised in captivity, which means he doesn't have the skills and instincts to survive in the wild. So for the two birds to be happy together, they have to be kept apart. But Romeo and Giulietta don't seem to mind. In Rio, Shakespeare can keep his 2 noble houses and roses by any other names. This love is for the birds. I hope you've enjoyed today's guided tour of the Cabinet of Curiosities. Subscribe for free on Apple Podcasts or learn more about the show by visiting curiositiespodcast.com. This show was created by me, Aaron Mahnke, in partnership with How Stuff Works. I make another award-winning show called Lore, which is a podcast, book series, and television show, and you can learn all about it over at theworldoflore.com. And until next time, stay curious.